Hi to everyone, welcome to today's video session. I Dr. E. Devi. Today's concept is data types and console IO. The aim of this session to familiarize students with the primitive data types int, float and char in C programming, input and output statements in C programming. Instructional objectives. This session is designed to declare variables of int, float and char data types, access values of int, float and char variables, know how to write input and output statements. Learning outcomes. At the end of this session, you should be able to create variables of int, float and char data types, assign values to variables and access the values, declare pointer variables to variables of int, float and char data types, taking input by using scanf and printing output by using printf function. Introduction to data types. The main agenda of writing a program is to perform some calculation. So whenever we want to perform some calculation, we have to supply some values to our program so that the program takes those values, perform some operations and then it produces some output. The values what we are giving to our program is called as a data types. So in today's session we will see what are different types of data we can supply to our program so that our program takes those values and process those values and produces some input, some output. So for example, a boy is there, his age is 2 years old and age is 20 years and his height is 5.7 feet. They are called data. The age 20 and height 5.7 is called as a data. We need to deal with these data in computer. As manually we say that age is 20 and height is 5.7, but when we want to deal this with computer, how to deal this one with the computer? And these values are in general called as a data. To access or store any data in our program, first we need to define its data type. Now age is 20 and the height is of 5.7. Now the age number 20 is a natural number or whole number and it is called as an integer type of value in computer. And the height is 5.7, which is in the form of fractional form, and this is called as a float type of value in computer. Now int, float are called as data types. Now what is data? Data is known as a fact which needs to be stored in memory to use in programming. So data is nothing but the values what we are storing in computer memory is called as a data. Now data types. The data types are used to define a variable to hold those facts as a data value. The data types are used to store these values in the computer memory and they represents what type of value you are going to store in the computer memory. The variable. The name given to memory block which holds a value. The value can be changed at any moment, so called as a variable. Now we discussed that we can store our values in the computer memory in order to do some calculations, but where the values are stored in the computer memory is called as a variable. Where the value is stored, to that location we give some name. That name is called as a variable name. So here the value whatever we are storing in the memory is varies or it can be changed depending on your situation, so that's why it is called as a variable. Now here the age, height, here the data is 20, 5.4 is called as a data. These are called data, and int, float are called as data types, and in the variables age and height we store those values, so these are called as a variables. Now I think you got some idea what is data, what is data type and what are variables. The values what we are storing is called as data, and the type what we are representing to those values are called data types, and where we store those values are called as a variables. Now how to do this in memory? How to declare a variable in the memory? Now for example, and when I am declaring a variable, what happens in the memory? So I declared a variable int age equals to 20. Int is the data type and age is the variable name and 20 is your data, means your value. Now when I declared a variable like this, the computer takes some memory, some bytes of memory and the address given to this memory is to 20,002. This address is given by your computer to that particular location and the name of this location is age and the value what is stored in that age is 20. So when we declare a variable in the computer memory, this happens in the memory. For variable, it occupies some space, and how much space it occupies, it depends on the data type what you are using. For example, for integer it occupies 4 bytes and this is the address given by the computer to that particular location and this is the value stored in that particular variable. Now like this we declare the variables in the program: data type, variable name and your value. Now I want to store height. Previously we stored a integer value 20. Now I want to store a height and height is of fractional type. So we'll see, can I store that height in this age variable? No, this is not possible. Why it is not possible here? The 5.4 is a fractional type of value and you declared the age variable with the integer data type. So in integer data variable we can store only integer type of values. So how can I store this 5.4? So in order to store 5.4 value which is of fractional type, I need another data type and that data type is called as a float. So in order to store the fractional type of value, we have to declare a float type of variable. Float, data type is float and the variable name is height and the value is 5.4. Now what happens when I declare a variable like this? The computer takes some memory and how much memory it is going to take, it depends on the data type. Here it is a float type, so it takes 4 bytes of memory and it gives some address to that location and the variable name is height and this 5.4 will be stored in that location. So depending on your data we have to select that particular data type and we have to declare the variable like that. If it is an integer, we declare the variable with the integer data type. If it is a float type of value, we declare the variable with the float data type. Now integer data. An integer is a non-fractional value stored in 2 bytes or 4 bytes within a range of 2 to the power of 15 to minus 2 to the power of 15 to positive 2 to the power of 15 minus 1. So what type of values we can store in integer are natural numbers or whole numbers, and like this we can store, but the second declaration is not allowed. We have to give only value and the sign of the value. We should not give any commas or dots or dollar symbols while giving the values. And how to declare a variable means the data type, the keyword what we use for integer data type is int and your variable name. So while giving the variable name we have to follow some rules, that the variable name always should start with an alphabet or an underscore. It should not start with any digit or any other symbols, and it should not contain any spaces. It should not contain any other symbol except underscore. So while following some rules we have to give the variable names. So this is the declaration of a integer variable. Now example, int data type and my variable name is age. Now after declaring the variable I can store a value in that. So we can store only integer type of values in that variable because I declared the age variable as a integer data type. Now float data type, and floating point data is a numerical data with fractional or real number value stored in 4 byte with the given range. So please identify the difference between integer and float. Integer data type is used to store natural numbers or whole numbers. For example, I want to store your number, registration number, or I want to store your phone number. So at that time I go with the integer data type, and float is used to store fractional type of values. For example, I want to store your height, or I want to store your CGP like a 9.8 or something. So the data which is in the fractional form, we go with the float data type. And example for float data type values are like 2.00, 3.2, and you can give the values in exponential format also by using E, capital E or small e. And we can't give some special symbols like comma, dot while giving the inputs in the float data type. Similarly, what we discussed in the integer data type. Now, how to declare float variable? The data type, the keyword what we use for float data type is float, and variable name. This is the name of the location where your data is stored, and the declaration example is float height. Float is the data type and height is the variable name, and height equals to, we can give some value like 5.7 or something. So whenever you want to store integer type of values, natural numbers or whole numbers, we go with the integer data, and whenever we want to store a fractional type of values, we go with the float data type. Data types. Now the data types represents what type of value you want to store in the memory. So previously I said that we write the program in order to perform some calculations, and when we want to perform some calculation, we have to supply some values to our program. The values what we are supplying is nothing but a data. So data types represents what type of value you want to store in the memory, and the data types indirectly represents how much memory should be occupied for your data. For example, if it is an integer, the computer occupies 4 bytes. If it is a float, the computer occupies 4 bytes. And natural numbers, in order to store natural numbers, we go with the integer data type, and in order to store fractional type or real type of values, we go with the float data type. Now data types, we have two categories of data types in C. Now primitive data types and derived data types. Now under primitive data types, these primitive data types are also called as a predefined data types. Under this we have 4 types: integer, int, char, float, double. Now here find the difference between all these 4. Int, float, double are used to store numeric type of values. This int, float, double is used to store numeric type of values, and under numeric again we have a So these are the basic types of data types. Now in all the under primitive data types we have int, char, float, double. Now among the 4, int, float, double is used to store numeric type of values. Okay, and in numeric type again we have 2 categories, that is integer type of value, and the other one is a fractional type of values. And to store integer type of values, we go with the int data type, and to store fractional type of values, we go with the float and double. So find the difference between among these 3 types. Int, float, double is used to store numeric type of values, and in numeric type again we have integer and fractional type, and in order to store integer type we go with the int data type, and to store fractional type of value we go with the float and double. Now what about this char data type? Now data doesn't means that always will be in the form of numerics. Sometimes the data may be in the form of alphabets. For example, I want to store your gender, F or M, or I want to store your name. So at that time the data will be in a alphabet format. Now for that we can go with the char data type. Now char is used to store character type of values. Now the variable can be declared like a char ch. Now ch is a character variable in which I can store character type of values. But remember, for ch it occupies only 1 byte. Now in the ch I can store at present any one particular alphabet like this. Now means if your input is a single character, you can declare the character variable like this. But if your input is some name or something, then you have to declare the character variable like a char name in square bracket some 10. Now the 10 represents that in name you can store up to 10 characters. So find the difference between ch and name. Both are character type of values. The common point is both are character type of values, but the difference between ch and name is that in ch you can store only one character, because for ch it occupies only 1 byte, and the character value should be mentioned in single quotes like this. And in name I declared the name with square bracket with some size, so this size represents that how many characters I can store in the name variable. And for name, now the computer occupies 10 bytes. In name you can store more than one character. So these are the basic data types in C language. So the basic data types are int, char, float, double, and under these four, int, float, double are used to store numeric, and in under numeric, int is used to store natural type of values, float and doubles are used to store fractional type of value, and the char data type is used to store alphabets type of values. So depending on your value, we have to select that particular data type. Now for int, the symbol what we use to represent int is %d, and for float it is %f, for double also it is %f, and for character we go with the %c. And the second type of data type is derived data types. Example for derived data types are arrays, structures, unions, enum and pointers, and these topics we will discuss later. Now primitive data types, we already discussed this. These are also called as a basic data types in C programming. Now primitive data types we have char, int. Under int again we have three types: short int and long int. Now all these three types of integers are used to store integer type of values only. Then what is their difference? The difference is that how much memory they are going to occupy and how much range of value you can store. Short int means it occupies only 1 byte, int means it occupies 4 bytes, and long int means it occupies 4 bytes. Remember, for int some compilers occupies 2 bytes. Okay, so the all the three are used to store integer type of value, but the difference is that how much memory they are going to occupy for that category. Now again and with this we'll get a difference in their range also. 1 byte means we can store a small value, int means we can store a little bit big value, long int means we can store a large value. I'll give a general example. To store age something we can go with the short int, and to store some like less than 32,000 we can go with the integers. For example, I want to store your phone number, that definitely I have to go with the long number because it is a 10-digit number. So again in short int we have two types, signed and unsigned. Signed means we can store either positive or negative value. If I declare any variable like signed short int of some a, means in a I can store either positive or negative value, and unsigned means we can store only positive values. So find the difference between signed and unsigned. Signed means I can store both positive and negative value. Unsigned means I can store only positive values. Next, again in int we have signed and unsigned. Long int, again long we have a signed and unsigned. So totally we can say that under integer we have 6 types of integer values we can store. Short int 2 categories, int 2 categories, long int 2 categories. So signed means both positive and negative values, unsigned means positive values. So here for example, I am going with the short int. The same thing you can apply with the long int and int. Short int means whenever I declare any variable with short int, the how much memory it occupies is 1 byte. Now 1 byte means the range of value what I can store. For example, if it is a signed means the range of value what I can store is minus now signed means for example signed int a I declared. Now a means it is declared with int and under with the qualifier called as the signed. Now signed int a means in a I can store both positive and negative value. Now for this a the computer occupies only 1 byte. Now the range of value what I can store in this 1 byte is minus 127 to positive 128 I can store in the A. Now if I declare the same one with unsigned int A. Now for this A also the computer occupies only 1 byte. But the range of value what I can store in this unsigned integer is 0 to 255. Only positive range because A is declared with the unsigned, and unsigned means you can store only positive type of values. So all the short int, long int all are same, are used to store integer type of values only. But the difference between signed and unsigned means you can store positive and negative, unsigned means only positive values. So here for short int it occupies 1 byte, int it occupies 2 bytes, and long int it occupies 4 bytes. So when we are going with the unsigned means we can store little bit bigger value and compare with the signed, because there is no negative value, only positive values we can store. So these are the 6 categories of integer type of values are there. Depending on your value you can go with any one among the 3, short int, or long int. Now the other one is float, and for float it occupies 4 bytes, and for double it occupies 8 bytes. The same difference what we got for short int, long int and int, the same difference we'll get for float and double. Float and double both are used to store fraction type of value, but where we'll get the difference is that in their memory and in their range of value what we can store in that variables. So these are the, and for character we already discussed that character is used to store alphabet type of values. Okay. And for a float we have one more, that is long double, for which it occupies 10 bytes. So we can say that int, short int, int, long int, like our integers. Again float we have 3, float, double, long double. And here the signed and unsigned are called as a qualifiers, because they are giving extra qualification to your variables. That's why they are called as a qualifiers. Now that's about the data types. Now we'll go with the console input and output. In the previous slides we discussed what type of values we can give to our program and how those values should be represented, like using int, float, char, double, like that. Now how to give this data? So in order to, whenever we do any program, basically we do input operations, some calculations, and then we do some output operations. Now what are the statements we can use to perform input and output operations in a C programming? That we'll discuss now. Now we do some input statements, and then we do some process, and with that we'll get some output. Now how to give these input and output statements in C programming? Now in order to print anything on the screen, we go with the printf function. Now printf is a predefined function which is used to print anything on the screen. Using printf you can print a message and you can print a value of a variable also. Now the syntax is format printf function. In quotation we have to give format string, and quotation close, and we have to give the argument list. Now for example, I am having a variable int a equals to sum 20. Now this value I want to print on the screen. Now it is an output operation, and to perform any output operation we have to go with the printf function. Now how I'll write this printf means, in order to print my a value on the screen, printf. Now format specifier, previously I discussed that for integer we use %d. Now %d comma, and the variable name, argument list is nothing but the variable name what you want to print on the screen. So like this we can write a printf statement in order to print a value on the screen, an output operation. Now the format string represents what type of value you want to print on the screen. If it is an integer, I'll go with the %d. If it is a float, I'll go with the %f. If it is a character, I'll go with the %c. So in printer, the format string represents what type of value you want to print on the screen, and argument list represents which variable value you want to print on the screen. So here I want to print a variable value. A is of integer type, so I used %d, and the variable name is a. Now on screen, if it is your output screen, it prints 20 value on the screen. Now for example, not only the value, I want to print message and value on the screen. So that also I can do with the printf statement. Now how to write? So printf a value is %d comma a. I can give like this. So if it is my output screen, then on output screen the output will be a value is 20. So we can mix both variables and values on the screen. So this is a printf is an output function, a predefined function used to print some output on the screen. Now we discussed output statement, how to print an output on the screen. Now we'll go with an input function. Now to input means taking input, taking values to your program. So to take values in your program, we have one more predefined function called as a scanf. So the function what we use in scanf input operation is scanf. So scanf is a predefined function which is used to get any type of value from the keyboard. Now the syntax for scanf is format specifier in quotation, comma, address of arg1 comma arg2. Arg1, arg2 are nothing but the variable names in which location you want to store your value. Now here we'll see the syntax of scanf. So scanf format specifier. Now here the format specifier again represents what type of value you want to get from the keyboard. Now I said previously that we supply different type of values to our program. The value may be in the form of integer, the value may be in the form of float, and the value may be in the form of a character. Now the using this format specifier will give us instruction to our computer that get this type of value from the keyboard. Now for example, if the value is of integer, we use % symbol. If a value is a float, we use %f, and if a value is a character, we use %c. Okay. So the format specifier represents what type of value you want to get from the keyboard. Now next, this arg1, arg2 represents whatever the value it is getting from the keyboard, in which variable the value should be stored. So the arg, this are used to they represents the variable name. So this symbol is called as a address of. The symbol is called as address of, and this arg1 and arg2 are nothing but variable name. So through scanf, we are giving an instruction to our computer that get some value from the keyboard and store them in the respective variables. So scanf is one more statement is used to get input from a keyboard. So I am repeating this. Using scanf, we are giving an instruction to our computer. Now what is that instruction? Get some value from the keyboard and store them in the respective variables. Now what type of value it has to get from the keyboard is represented with the help of a format specifier. Is it clear? Yes. Now for example, I am having a variable int a. Now previously in the previous slides, we assigned a value to variable directly like this. So this is called static input. Means directly we are telling what is a value. But I want to give value for my a dynamically. Means at the time of program execution I want to give a value to my a. So that I can give with the help of a scanf function. So assigning directly value to variable is a static input. Now dynamically I want to give the values to my variables. Now that I can do by using this scanf. Now how I'll write that one? Look at here, scanf. Okay. Now into a I want to get the value. Now what type of value I want to get in for a? In integer type. And for integer, what is the symbol we are using? %d. So the format specifier is %d, which represents that get an integer value from the keyboard, and whatever the value it is getting, that should be stored in a variable called as a address of a. Get the instruction clearly. Scanf used to get input from the keyboard, in quotation %d, which represents that the compiler has to get an integer value from the keyboard, and whatever the value we are getting should be stored in the variable called as a address of a. Now look at here, when I declared a variable in computer, the computer occupies some memory to my variable a and gives the name as a to that location. Now when I wrote this statement scanf %d address of a, at the time of execution I have entered some value through my keyboard, and that value will be get by the scanf function, and it stores that value in address of a. Address of a means it will go to the memory and it checks where is the memory location with the name a, and in that name it in that location it stores the value whatever you pressed using your keyboard. So scanf is used to get input from the keyboard, and it is used to give dynamic input. Okay. So for example, I have two variables, int a and float b. For these two variables I want to get input from the scanf. So I can write a statement scanf %d %f. I am giving two format specifiers. The reason is that I want to get one integer value for my a and one float value for my b. So for integer I am going with the %d, and for float I am going with the %f, and for integer I will use address of b, and for float I will use address of b. Now with this scanf we are giving an instruction to our compiler that get two values from the keyboard. One values of integer type, one values of float type, and integer value store in the address of a and the float value store in the address of b. So using scanf we can give a dynamic input, and for example I want to get a character value. So I have a variable char ch. For this ch I want to get a value. So I can write a statement scanf %c address of ch. I think you got an idea why I used %c, because characters are represented with the format specifier called as a %c, and in which variable I want to store my value? In address of ch. So the input statement what we use in a program is a scanf, and the output statement what we use in our program is an printf statement. So I'll write a small program on this, means where I'll do both input and output statements, output operations. We'll declare one small variable, okay, and we'll take input for that variable, and we'll print that output on the screen using these two input and output functions. So remember the order of writing any program. Any program order will be first taking input. If your program needs any calculations, you can do that process, nothing but calculations, and then you have to print output. Okay, this will be the order of any program in any language. Okay, now look at this. I'll declare a variable int a, and I'll give a message, a printf, a general message, enter a value, and then I'll write a scanf %d address of a. Okay, now whatever the value I got, I want to print on the screen. So printf a value is %d a. So like this we can do the input and output operations. So scanf, what I explained now, I kept in the slide. So like this we can do our input and output operation. So these are the some self-assessment questions you can go through. So in this session we discussed what are different data types, and we discussed input and output statement. So go through these activities, try these programs. And these are the some reference books what you can refer for more knowledge. And thank you.